You too.
All right, the insane connections between Somali fraud and Minnesota's top Democrats. Let's check it out. And welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. Happy Friday to you. There has been a concerted effort this week by Democrats to distract away from a disastrous fraud story in Minnesota, demanding the media focus solely on the president's harsh response to it. This week, Trump eviscerated Somali refugees after discovering the tremendous amount of money that community has been stealing from Americans, a crime that is incredibly offensive. We open up our country and our wealth to people fleeing war, to people claiming they need refuge, they need asylum, and many of them have responded to that by coming here and then stealing right out of your pocket. It is infuriating, and the president's tone matched how most of his supporters, at least the sensible ones, feel about this. If you're not angry about this, you should be. In addition to the fraud is the realization that the vast majority of these people, Somali refugees, are entering the country and signing up to be perpetually on some kind of welfare. We are just adopting the third world, and the worst of them are then stealing from us in addition to that. All part of this globalist suicide mission that our country has been on. But much louder than the outrage over this ridiculous reality is the outrage over Trump's response to it, which has sounded like this.
I think the president is not only mistaken here, but he is literally textbook definition of racism.
Tonight, President Trump ups the rhetoric against Somali immigrants in Minnesota.
Donald Trump is doubling down on his racist attacks against Somali immigrants.
Donald Trump continued to level outrageously racist attacks against Somali Americans in general.
Again, racism, what does it even mean anymore? They overuse it so much, they use it for everything. It has no meaning when it's everything. It means nothing. Scream and cry, all a distraction, and they fell for it again. Trump makes bombastic remarks like he did at the cabinet meeting this week to force attention on the subject matter like this. When he says something that bold, everybody pays attention to the story for a few days, and that's the point. Everybody's talking about it, and millions of Americans are realizing that our own people, Americans, are being gamed hard by our own refugee system. And man, is it a scam. The current estimate is that over $1 billion, and it's looking like it's going to be in the billions, has been stolen by Somali fraud rings in the state of Minnesota. And now we learn Minnesota's top Democrats are very connected to that theft. Ilhan Omar, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, the attorney general for the state, Keith Ellison, among others, received campaign donations, a lot of money from these fraudsters. A scandal that popped up as a Minneapolis local news story earlier this year is getting fresh eyes this week. Minnesota's AG, Keith Ellison, big-time Democrat, showing clear signs of a wicked kind of corruption here. His voice recorded months ago while talking to fraudsters who were accused of stealing $250 million from a COVID child nutrition program. Here's what Ellison said to these people.
I'm very concerned about it. I don't run the agencies, but let me just finish by saying, but often the agencies call on my lawyers who represent them. When you tell me, hey, this is a problem, I call somebody and say, what's going on? Just getting the inquiry from the AG is sometimes enough to make people knock it off.
Just getting the inquiry from the AG is enough to make these people knock it off. To knock it off means to stop investigating the people that stole $250 million in COVID funds for little kids to eat. That's Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, promising to apply some pressure to get investigators to stop looking at his Somali buddies who donate heavily to his campaign. Their alleged crime described like this by Care 11, a local TV station in Minneapolis. Take a listen to this.
Prosecutors say the defendants claim to be serving meals to kids in places that make no sense, such as this big parking lot in Shakopee. or in derelict commercial spaces like this. According to court documents, the defendants created sham meal count sheets and phony attendance rosters with children names such as Man Sincere, Ron Donald, or even John Doe. Prosecutors say they will trace how the defendants used the federal money to buy vehicles, real estate, a down payment on a $2.5 million home build, and a honeymoon in the Maldives.
These people are the scum of the earth. They're stealing your money, designated by our ridiculous government to go towards COVID funds, which was, they printed trillions of dollars. They're stealing that money and buying up property and everything else after claiming refuge, claiming asylum in our country. And you have Keith Ellison right there in the middle of that picture, right on my shoulder, the Attorney General for the state. Looks like he belongs in prison, from what we just heard there. Ellison, his son, a councilman, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, and Ilhan Omar all took loads of cash, $53,000 in donations from these Somalian fraudsters. Don't tell me they didn't know exactly what was going on. This is mob behavior. Pay us off and you can steal as much as you want from those taxpayers. What do we care? It's not our money. Steal it. Just take care of us and make sure all your people vote for us. Keep us in power. That's blue state corruption at its finest. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar receiving a total of $7,400 in donations from 3 defendants, including 2 associated with a restaurant called Safari, which allegedly received $16 million in fraudulent funds. In 2018, Ilhan held her election victory party at that restaurant, one of the restaurants connected to this fraud. So no surprise, Ilhan is fully defending her people. She knew about this. She doesn't care. She was happy to see her countrymen taking as much as they can from us filthy rich Americans.
I think what happened is that, you know, when you have these kind of new programs that are designed to help people, you're oftentimes relying on third parties to be able to facilitate. And I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
Deport her. Deport them all. Ridiculous. Such a ridiculous story. But there's a larger issue with Somalian refugees than fraud. As big as the fraud story is, and as I said, it's getting into the billions of dollars. Broaden it out beyond the really bad ones, you have an entire community showing itself that it is incompatible with an advanced Western life. Most of the Somali kids that are here now are not graduating from high school. Their parents are not even allowing them, many of them, to even attend school in this country because our schools are not Islamic, something that they're fighting to change. The vast majority of these people are taking more from the system than they contribute. Local station in the Twin Cities trying to tout how important Somalis are to Minnesota's economy actually ended up proving the opposite. The claim from that network, Somali Minnesotans generate at least $500 million in income annually and pay about $67 million in state and local taxes. Wow, that's a lot of money, right? Sounds great. $500 million in income for the state? Sounds really good. But we did the math, or I should say $500 million in income for themselves. We did the math on that. 86,000 Somalis in Minnesota. That comes out to about $5,000 a year in income per person. And even if you add in children to that, you're still not getting above the poverty level. You're getting nowhere near it. Which means they're virtually all on some kind of welfare to survive. But of course, that doesn't stop politicians from using these people for power and talking like this.
We are in every industry, and Minnesota would not be able to survive nor thrive without the Somali community.
The state of Minnesota, been around for a very long time, would not be able to survive or thrive without Somalian refugees. That's a real statement. All right, Senator Markwayne Mullin from the state of Oklahoma joins us tonight from the Capitol. Sir, good to have you on. The details of what we've learned about the scale of Somali fraud in the state of Minnesota have just been unbelievable. And now we learned that the Attorney General of the state, Keith Ellison, big-time partisan guy on the left, offering to, I guess, apply pressure on Somali refugees that are stealing or on the people investigating Somali refugees stealing millions from COVID programs to feed little kids. The soundbite of that has now resurfaced. It's unbelievable. You have Ilhan Omar partying at a restaurant owned by one of these Somali fraudsters, and you start to wonder, you start to kind of see how this all works.
Yeah, it's a systematic failure by Tim Walz, by the entire Democrat Party. I mean, the restaurant where Omar literally kicked her campaign off in 2018, I mean, the numbers are fluctuating anywhere from 100 million to 250 million, and we really don't know where it's at, but the restaurant owner received a tremendous amount of money back from what some whistleblowers have said that the fraud could go up to $8 billion. It's been reported at $1 billion, but it doesn't seem to go away. I mean, Tim Walz evidently was alerted that this was an issue, or this could be an issue. He decided to turn a blind eye to it. And then you have the constituent base of Omar, who's Somalian herself, seems to be the ones that benefited from it. And if you follow the money, it even gets worse, because when you follow the money, it goes. A lot of this money was funneled all the way back to Somalia that went to Al-Shabaab, the terrorist organization. Yeah. It is extremely concerning that literally our taxpayers were frauded of billions of dollars possibly to fund a terrorist organization that we are fighting against.
And the craziest thing is that it sounds like these people knew. It sounds like top Democrats in the state knew this was happening, and they just don't care because, again, it's a huge pile of American money. That's how Ilhan Omar sees this country. It's just a big pile of money that she can use to the benefit of her own people. I don't think she finds herself to be an American. I think she's still a Somalian at heart, and I think she knew that her brethren were stealing from us, and I don't think anybody really cared, and I think nobody wanted to touch it, especially a white guy like Tim Walz or Jacob Fry. They don't want to touch it because how does that look for them politically? And why would they go after people that are donating to their campaign? So this is how the mob works. Like, you can do whatever you want, but you're going to give us our cut.
I mean, obviously, Tim Walz, Governor Walz, didn't want to touch it because he was in the middle of a presidential election.
Sure.
And Omar speaks for herself. She doesn't love this country that gave her this opportunity.
No.
For some reason, you'd think she would embrace this country that has given so many of her other Somalians an opportunity to get away from the crime-ridden terrorist country that they have, that their number one income comes from criminal activity, even piracy. And so now you come to the United States, and Omar had an opportunity to be an example of what America could bring, actually being elected to the United States Congress. And instead, she goes out and has this ridiculous rhetoric against the United States that she sounds anti-American, which I will agree with you, Rob. I believe she is. I don't believe she embraces this country. I don't think she loves this country. She wants to change this country to what? The lawless, and I'm going to use a pretty big word here, but there's a reason why everybody left, the lawless hellhole that you left from. And now you're wanting to bring it to the United States? Oh, wait, no, you want to defraud the United States of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and send it back to that country, to the criminal organization that ran you out to begin with.
It's surreal. It's surreal what we've let into this country, and it's so much of we have been gamed by our own refugee program. I mean that's a bigger part of it. I mean the fact that we are going into places, like third world African nations and just adopting people by the thousands. And then you have the government incentivizing these NGOs to go and find as many as they can and bring them here. And then you give them thousands of dollars. They're gaming the American people with our own policies. And it's surreal to watch. And then you see these politicians that know it's happening, don't care, look the other way. You have Trump releasing a national security strategy, the subsection, the era of mass migration is over. That's just a look at the document there. But I mean, it's not just illegal immigration, is it? A lot of this is legal, and it's so toxic in this country.
Well, let's reset this. They were gaining this system. Underneath Biden, it was an open door policy. Underneath Trump, it's about America first policy, right? We're a nation of laws, and what separates us from Somalia and what separates us from other third world countries is that we're not a lawless nation, but we were underneath Joe Biden. And now when President Trump is trying to restore law and order, he's sealing our borders, he's bringing common sense to the refugee or immigration program, and then he's saying, hold on a second, we're not going to accept these individuals individuals that are coming from these countries that are terrorizing our hometowns, that are taking advantage of the gracious taxpayers of the United States. Hold on, we're going to stop that, and we're going to reset. So thank God we have President Trump here, but it's interesting. The more President Trump tries to restore law and order, you got Omar, you got Waltz, and you got these other blue cities, governors and mayors that are fighting against him. And you go, why? Are we either for America or against America? Because this goes way beyond just defunding police.
Yeah.
When you don't want to restore law and order in our streets, that makes you anti-American, because that's what America is about, giving everybody equal opportunities and treating criminals like criminals.
Well said. Senator Markwayne Mullin, good to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, Liz Collin is an independent journalist in Minneapolis. She knows this story very well, and she's back with us tonight. Liz, good to see you again. It's wild to me that the Ellison soundbite talking to, these fraudsters and, I guess kind of saying I can lean on some people and hopefully make this case go away. People that stole millions of dollars from a COVID program for kids to eat is surreal. Ilhan Omar having her party at a restaurant owned by these fraudsters. I mean, this looks really bad, and you've known about this for a long time. It's all coming to light on a national scale right now, but you've known this story for a while. Go ahead and respond to that.
Yeah, it's been quite a week, Rob. We now have multiple federal investigations that have been launched into what's going on in Minnesota. You have the U.S. Treasury Secretary investigating after reports of fraud money pouring into terrorist groups in Somalia, a House oversight investigation into fraud. The Transportation Secretary announcing it's going to pull millions in federal funding after finding a third of commercial driver's licenses were issued to illegal immigrants here in Minnesota. The DOJ is suing the state currently for access to our voter rolls, and the Agriculture Secretary also wants our SNAP data. That is actually just a snapshot of what has transpired here this week. I know I joined you earlier this week. But also on this fraud front, I wanted to explain some new developments here. Announced also this week that a 2-year moratorium has been put on what's known as this home and community-based services. It also appears to be ripe with fraud. It's a state-run program that provides licenses to group homes. New license applications skyrocketed, grew by 283%, Rob, and I spoke to several sources who work with the state and say, again, it's primarily Somali people who are applying to this program, and they've had to now put a 2-year moratorium in place in just that new program alone.
It's just unbelievable. I want to play the mayor of Minneapolis with his full, everybody's going after Trump because of the way he talks about it, obviously, and he's going fully behind the Somalis in his city. Take a listen to this.
What you see is a visual representation of we have your back, and when you come for one of us, you come for all of us. We reject the hateful rhetoric of Donald Trump.
The hateful rhetoric of Donald Trump. Is there any doubt in your mind that that man is fully aware of the scale of fraud in his state and just couldn't care less?
Mayor Jacob Frey, in fact, has had to return campaign donations, donations that poured in with this money connected to Feeding Our Future, the $250 million fraud alone. All week long, we've seen this pandering at every turn by these so-called leaders in Minneapolis specifically, again, focused on basically, as they're saying, standing with the Somali community. But how dare you ask a question about the billions of dollars, they're now saying multi-billions of dollars in fraud that seems to be by far related to the Somali community. And in fact, the mayor has said that ICE cannot park in city parking lots, signing even an order to say that they're not allowed in parking lots. It really is almost comical in a way to see.
Yeah. It's kind of like mob rule, isn't it? It's almost like you guys can do whatever the hell you want. I said the same thing to Markwayne Mullin just a minute ago. You can do whatever you want as long as you vote for us and the donations keep coming in. We're going to look the other way, steal as much as you want, because at the end of the day, it's not Jacob Frey's money, it's not Ilhan Omar's money, it's not Tim Walz's money. What do they care?
Yeah, again, so pervasive and playing out in plain sight. In fact, I was actually just speaking with a commercial real estate broker yesterday. She says she is constantly contacted by members of the Somali community looking to rent any kind of office space with an address. They want to set up autism centers, adult daycares, healthcare, transportation clinics. She tells me that they're open about it. They need the space just in case they get audited. Those were the words that she's been told. Again, not even really hiding what, in fact, they're trying to do.
It's such an unbelievable story. I'm so glad that, because you've been following this for a while, and I'm so glad that this is blown up on a national level so that all this comes out, because how frustrating it must be as a reporter to see this and to know that, it just never went anywhere. Hopefully some kind of accountability. There's a lot of people, it sounds like, belong in jail, and hopefully that moment comes. Liz, Collin, thanks so much. We'll come back to you, of course. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob.
All right, they say the pipe bomber is MAGA and was angry over the 2020 election being stolen from Trump. But he started building those bombs long before that election. It's up next.
My employees and I want to thank all of you at Newsmax for your continued support of MyPillow. It's because of you and the grace of God that we're making it through. And to thank you, we're bringing you the best offers ever. Get our MyPillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regularly $119.98, now only $29.88. Our My Towels are finally back in stock. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. Towels that actually work. What a concept. And for the first time and the only time ever, you're going to get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code when you order today. Inventory for these offers are extremely limited, and once they're gone, they're gone.
They killed her brother. They shot her dog. And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom, not terror.
Invest in Ukraine now. Ukraine is rebuilding, innovating, and shaping the future. Because Ukraine is the potential. Kyivstar is Ukraine's leading digital operator. Invests in Ukraine's connectivity, entertainment, ride-hailing, healthcare, and innovation. It's time to think opportunity. It's time to think Ukraine now.
All right, so after a 5-year manhunt, the accused D.C. pipe bomber, 30-year-old Brian Cole Jr., found living at his mom's house, Woodbridge, Virginia, just outside D.C., described as autistic-like by his grandmother. This young man, 30 years old, did not enter a plea, was ordered for detainment after appearing in D.C. federal court earlier today with reportedly up to 6 family members in attendance. It's such a bizarre story. He's alleged to have placed 2 pipe bombs on January 5, 2021, one day before the January 6 Capitol riot. One outside the RNC, the other outside the DNC. The charging documents show that he went and bought all this material. It seems like a pretty shut and closed case. It looks pretty clean. Charged with 2 federal counts. Attempted malicious destruction by fire and explosives and transporting an explosive device across state lines, facing a max of 30 years, back in court in 10 days. Legal expert Mike Davis, founder of the Article 3 Project, with us tonight to talk about this. There's been a lot of anonymously sourced reporting surrounding the motive of this young man. NBC News, even Fox, New York Times, all indicating today that sources are telling them that he admitted that he planted the devices and said that he believed that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations to Attorney General Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Judge Jeanine Pirro. This is really good work. It should not have taken 5 years to find this guy and arrest him. So you have to ask, what the heck was the Biden Justice Department doing for 5 years? Maybe instead of going after every grandma who trespassed and took selfies on January 6th. They should have put more resources into finding and arresting this guy. But if you look at the evidence in this case, this guy started assembling this bomb-making material for several years, going back to 2019, long before the 2020 election. So I don't know how much credit I would give to these anonymous leaks to these liberal outlets like the New York Times.
That's exactly the point. I mean, he's assembling, he's buying the material for these bombs all through the summer of 2020 when Trump is president. The election has not happened yet. You just wonder if did he come up with an excuse that would make him, less of a threat to the Trump administration, to the Trump DOJ, that maybe he thought he could gain some favor by giving them that story. The Daily Wire reports that he worked for his dad's bail bonds company, which worked to free illegal immigrants from ICE facilities, and sued the Trump administration's DHS. And weeks before he planted these bombs, the court ruled against his father's company, the company that he worked for, on immigration issues. And then in 2021, the company held a press conference. That bail bonds company held a press conference bemoaning anti-black racism with the left-wing attorney Benjamin Crump there with Brian Cole's father. So to me, nothing about the idea that he is a MAGA Trump supporter, nothing about that tracks at all.
No, not at all. And it looks like the liberal media is just trying to smear President Trump and his supporters. Once again, look, we don't know enough about from the facts in this case. We do know, according to reports, he apparently confessed to doing this. He had a 4-hour interview with federal officials at the FBI. Again, the Trump Justice Department with Pam Bondi and Kash Patel did a fantastic job uncovering this crime and getting this guy held accountable. And we're going to have to see how this plays out. He has a detention hearing coming up here on December 15th, and we'll let the evidence play out in this case.
Yeah, I mean, you see him, and he's described as a quiet kid, potentially an autistic kid. You kind of feel sorry for him, and just very delusioned and confused to do something like this. It was such a bizarre thing that when we saw him, we were like, this is the guy. It just didn't make a lot of sense. You see this real quiet kid, has a little dog, doesn't talk to people much, and you kind of feel bad. Remember when Blaze, about a month ago, the Blaze had that piece alleging that they had done this gait analysis, and they had with almost certainty that they thought that it was a female Capitol cop that ended up going to the CIA. They've now had to retract that entire story and that entire allegation, which could be problematic for them. Isn't it wild, though, that, I mean, they were so certain that they had this female cop, that covered up person walking around on that cold evening was a female. It ends up being a black kid. I mean, isn't that strange how they got that so wrong?
Yeah, I think that the media outlets on both sides, conservative and liberal, need to start focusing more on reporting the facts instead of coming up with crazy conspiracy theories.
Yeah, well said. Mike Davis from the Article 3 Project. Good to see you, Mike. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Major ruling from the Supreme Court on Texas redistricting. It looks like Jasmine Crockett is in big trouble. We've got that next with the state's Attorney General, Ken Paxton.
It's the Blue Compass RV annual Blue Tag clearance. Save over 40% on select new RVs during our largest sale of the year. Plus, every RV comes with a 1-year VIP membership to RV Complete, a $5,000 value. Visit us online or in store today.
Have you compared your Medicare plan recently? With eHealth, you can compare Medicare plans side by side for free. So we invited people to give eHealth a try and discover how easy it can be to find your Medicare match.
This is pretty amazing. I can go on a vacation with this money. I have quite a few prescriptions.
That's why people call us. We're going to compare plans, and I'm going to try to get you as much bang for your buck as possible.
That's great.
This one here covers all your prescriptions, your doctors as well.
Oh, wonderful.
I have a hard time with this.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for. Based on our conversation today, I would highly recommend this plan.
You're so helpful. You don't know.
I'm excited for you, sir. Again, my name is Cham. If you have any other questions, give me a ring.
Thank you very much. Oh my God, that was super easy.
See how your Medicare plan stacks up with the big changes for 2026. Just call this number or get started at eHealth.com. Compare plans that cover your doctors, prescriptions, pharmacy, and budget. And compare plans from the nation's top insurance companies. They pay us to help you. How much do you think you'll be able to save using eHealth?
At least $300 a month.
Would you say you found your Medicare match?
Yes, I did. What Sham did, she explained to me exactly what I need to know.
Well, I have a surprise for you. Cham, come on out.
Oh my goodness.
It's a pleasure to meet you today, sir. What does it feel like to be face to face?
You helped me out quite a bit.
Call to meet your advisor. They're paid the same no matter which Medicare Advantage plan you choose. Ask them about eHealth Live Advise or get started on your own at eHealth.com. Either way, it's always a free service. See if you could get more for less with eHealth, like these folks did.
The savings are unbelievable.
I could see the costs side by side.
eHealth is wonderful. $1,200 savings in my pocket. I was really pleasantly surprised with that.
Call 1-800-708-0234 to compare Medicare plans in your area or visit eHealth.com.
eHealth, your Medicare matchmaker.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty, invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
All right, the Supreme Court upholding Texas's new congressional map, a major victory for Republicans as they try to keep the House in 2026. This was a big deal this week. The new map could potentially add 5 more GOP seats. That's the plan anyway. It's forcing key Democrats toward potential primaries or retirement. That includes Al Green, one of the craziest guys in the Democrat Party, the guy that calls for Trump to be impeached about on a weekly basis at this point. His district erased. Now forced into a primary with other Democrats. Jasmine Crockett's district also gerrymandered. New reports hinting that she might run for Senate instead of facing a congressional primary with a bunch of other Democrats as well. She's expected to decide that on Monday. Democrats are not happy about this decision from the Supreme Court. Take a listen.
There is a history of racial discrimination and racial gerrymandering and racial disadvantages when it comes to drawing maps in this country, particularly, not exclusively, but particularly in places in the South. If the Supreme Court is now giving a green light to say, well, if you say it's partisan motives and you don't say it's racial, we're going to take that on face value. And it allows racial gerrymandering, the literal disadvantages of people based on their skin color, cutting people up in terms of voting based on their skin color.
All right, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton successfully defended Texas's map in front of the Supreme Court, and he's celebrating that tonight in a tuxedo, I guess. It's good to have you on, sir. Good to see you tonight. So Democrats have been gerrymandering for decades. We know that tens of millions of Republicans up here in the Northeast, where I live, have virtually no representation whatsoever. And I'm wondering if you think that's part of why the Supreme Court sided with you. Why did you win the case?
Well, celebrating an early Christmas gift and your good ratings, Rob. So it's more than just a victory. Yeah. So yeah, look, it's been happening for years. The Democrats have been doing it. It's sort of hypocritical, not sort of, it's hypocritical for them to complain about Texas doing the very same thing that multiple Democratic states have done, including 9 states that have no Republican representation, despite the fact that there are many Republicans in those states. So, they can complain, but the reality is they need to look at what their own party has done for years.
Yeah, that's well said. What do you think? How did you win the case? Talk about the case and how it was won and how you won over the court.
Yeah, it's simple. The court has said for years, and they've allowed, this is how the Democrats have done what they've done. The courts have said, the Supreme Court particularly has said that you can politically gerrymander as long as it's not based on other factors like race. If you do it for political reasons, which is exactly what we did, then you can draw the lines however the legislature politically determines is in the best interest of that state. And clearly we've seen it, as you said, in multiple Democratic states, and it's about time the Republicans start doing it. And I hope that we're the cutting edge for other Republican states to go back and do the same thing.
Yeah. You're running for Senate yourself. You want John Cornyn's seat in your state of Texas. It looks like Jasmine Crockett could also be running for Senate as the new congressional map forces her to run in a district against multiple Democrats. If she wins that Senate primary, and if you can beat Cornyn, Crockett would be your opponent. Maybe one of the most hated people by Republicans in the country would be your opponent. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me say when I win the primary, which is going to happen. We've been leading the polls since April, and we have a senator who's been there he would be going on 5 terms, which no one's ever done in Texas. And he's not been a MAGA guy. He's not been a conservative. He's fought us on the border wall, amnesty, Second Amendment, and he's actually opposed Donald Trump's election. So Jasmine Crockett will be in a race with other Democrats. So we don't know for sure that she's going to win. So, I welcome her to the race if she wants to get in. It's time for a change. And I think everybody knows it. Republican and Democrats alike know that we need a change in Texas.
Yeah. I want to talk about the Cuellar pardon. The president pardoning Texas Democrat Henry Cuellar, citing a weaponized Biden DOJ that went after him after he had criticized the border. The administration charging Cuellar and his wife for bribery. Cuellar got that pardon and immediately announced that he's running again as a Democrat, which kind of complicates things because the new Texas map makes his district more red. So I wanted to ask, do you think that Trump's pardon there might have complicated the Republican agenda in your state?
Look, I don't know, and I don't know the details of his pardon. I know that the Biden administration was using lawfare to go after people they didn't like, including some Democrats who spoke out against what was going on at the border. Certainly used it against Republicans, including Donald Trump, including me, including many others. So maybe it does complicate things, but I know that the president did what he thought was right based on the facts that were in front of him. So you can't fault him if he doesn't think that Henry Cuellar got treated fairly. Then that's certainly his decision, not mine.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good party on this Friday night. Ken Paxton from the state of Texas. Good to see you, sir. Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. All right. The same California liberals that screamed for months about George Floyd, the felon, could not care less about a gang shooting that killed 4 people, including 3 little kids. That's up next.
I've been taking Balance of Nature 3-4 years now.
It's fruits and vegetables in our daily diet.
And it's real. It smells like fruits and vegetables.
Balance of Nature, I trust the simplicity of what it is.
I know that you need a balance of fruits and vegetables. I mean, my grandma told me that, my mom told me that. What's there to lose in taking Balance of Nature?
This offer is being extended. When you purchase your first set as a new preferred customer, get a free variety snack pack, absolutely free with your order.
Moose Munch!
When you want gifts to express a lifetime of love, choose hand-picked holiday treasures from Harry and David. Iconically American, crafted with joy and made to share for generations.
Perfectly packaged pretzels for everyone on your list. Create your own gift box from over 50 soft, crunchy, salty, and sweet flavors. Pretzels.com. Order now for holiday delivery.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at GetTrumpWatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Tommy Copper has an advanced weapon to fight pain and recover faster.
I do this because I occasionally do this. And I have to do this. My wife makes me do this. And I love doing this.
Infrared and red light therapy works at the cellular level to help reduce swelling and fight pain.
Best 20 minutes of my day.
That's all it takes to get the most out of every day. Go to TommyCopper.com and save 40% site-wide today.
You need this. Trust me.
Between drained investment accounts, lost wages, and hiring lawyers, identity theft can cost you more than you might think. Only LifeLock offers the $1 Million Protection Package with reimbursement up to $3 million. LifeLock. Join today.
They killed her brother. They shot her dog. And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom, not terror.
Check their new game day fit. Oh, snap! DirecTV got hot.
That's right. DirecTV is flexing with all those pro and college games at your fingertips. This ain't your dad's cable, son. It's couture.
Okay, thank you so much. I was about to say that. It's couture.
Total Beats Ultimate Heart Health is the newest innovation from America's best-selling Beats brand. Ultimate Heart Health contains a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support, plus CoQ10 for even better heart health. Find Total Beats Ultimate Heart Health at Walmart today.
All right, welcome back. Tragedy struck Stockton, California last weekend. 4 people, including 3 kids, shot dead at a toddler's birthday party, a mass shooting. The killer's still on the loose. The children, 2, 8, 14, and a 21-year-old, all killed at a children's birthday party. And California Democrat leaders like Gavin Newsom, it would appear, could not care less. A quick little stock post about gun violence having no place in our society, blah, 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 and saying it's a horrific shooting. Newsom not visiting Stockton, where 3 kids and 1 young adult were killed. He left Tuesday for a cross-country road trip for a mix of political and state business. And Dr. Michael Savage, the host of Savage Nation, joins us now. He's a California guy. The same people that spent how many months talking nonstop about the felon George Floyd, you see something like this and they couldn't care less.
Well, yes. And of course, I'm not surprised by any of it. I understand. Look, it's Northern California where I live.
Yeah.
And I understand through sources who will remain unnamed that Stockton is one of 3 California cities allegedly run 100% by gangs. No one has reported this. The other 2 are Santa Rosa and Fairfield. I don't blame Gavin for not going into Stockton. I wouldn't even drive through the city. It was crazy. There's a shooting with children killed and no one knows who did it. Who's the police chief? Who's in charge there? Where's the governor? They're all out to lunch, right? Because everyone's afraid of these cities, Rob. Stockton, Santa Rosa, and Fairfield, according to my sources, are no-go zones in the state.
In the
and this
state
is not
of
known
California. It's
Yes.
surreal. And it's such a wealthy state that you have cities like this. It's unbelievable.
Well, we have a railway to nowhere that cost $1 billion. I mean, we have so many corrupt things going on in the state that don't seem to get any traction at all. All we hear about is Venezuelan drug runners are suddenly, let's see, they were fishermen last week, and then they became, shipwrecked sailors. So the same people, like Jake Tapper, who called the black guy a white guy, have nothing to say about the shooting in Stockton. I mean, look, you're dealing with Alice in Wonderland. We're trying to make sense out of nonsense. It's impossible. I could put it in a more visceral way, but it's a national television show, so I can't do it. But I think people get the picture.
Yeah.
It's complete lies from top to bottom, and it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
You're right. I saw the shooting when it happened last weekend, I believe. Kids shot. Of course I want to know who did it. First question a reader says is, gee, I wonder who went into that hall and shot it up, right? Not one report. Nothing. Zero. Why? I have to go back to my main point, Rob. 3 cities, according to my sources, are allegedly run 100% by gangs from top to bottom. Stockton is one of them. Santa Rosa is another, and Fairfield. They're no-go zones, and that's what I was told.
Want to get your perspective before I let you go on the drug boats and the so much sympathy for these drug runners, so little care. I mean, when was the last time you heard these politicians talk about the tens of thousands of Americans that die of drugs every year? Go ahead.
Well, I was watching it. I saw they became shipwrecked sailors who were mercilessly killed by our Navy SEALs from a gunship. I said, wait a minute. A week before they were fishermen, remember?
Yeah. Right.
Then suddenly some genius, I don't know where, I don't know, DNC came up with, they say shipwrecked sailors is like injection drug users instead of junkies. Homeless is a nice word for a bum who lives in a tent.
Yep.
Junkies, street bums. Will someone call 911 the next time a Democrat speaks? Because people die when they lie, Rob. We all know this. I was watching a thing about the Somalis. How much more can we, the people, take? We hear about affordability. Okay, let's say there's an affordability problem for the brats in New York City who don't want to live in Flushing. They want a nice apartment in Manhattan. They think that a communist Muslim is going to give them an apartment in Manhattan. Okay, I used to commute from Flushing, even though I wanted to live in a Greenwich Village. I couldn't afford Manhattan. That's what the subway is for. But they all think they're entitled to a nice apartment in Manhattan. It's the same mentality that speaks to these issues. They're living in another, let's say, reality, another zone.
Yeah, that's so true. Dr. Savage, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Have a nice Friday.
You too. Talking about that Minnesota Somali fraud and all the details that have come to light, we're going to bring in Dick Morris now to talk about this. We see right here the governor there. We know he knew. Everybody knew that this was happening in the state, and the tremendous amount of money was stolen. And Dick, these are all people that these fraudsters all supported Democrats in the state. They vocally supported Democrats in the state. All of the Somali people vote for Democrats in the state. Nobody wanted to touch this problem.
Well, this is a phenomenon that is unique in American politics these days. We've always had crime, we've always had killings, we've always had theft. But this is a situation where there is an immigrant population that has been deliberately concentrated in certain areas. Stockton, California is one, and Minnesota is another. And they've been concentrated there by federal authorities that relocated people to those areas. And the result has become like in France, areas that cops can't go, areas that law and order does not apply. If there's any law used, it's Sharia law. And it's not immigration, it's really invasion. And you have 90,000 Somalians living in Minnesota, by far the largest concentration in the country. And they run the city, they run the state. They've appointed the Congressman Ilan Omar is Somali, and the entire political process has been captured by these immigrants.
Yep.
And it's got nothing to do with immigration; it has everything to do with invasion.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable story. We've been talking about it all week. Dick Morris, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mamdani wants to build a homeless utopia in New York.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Do you care where the economy is headed? What about elections? Or climate change? See the forecast consensus on our future at IBKR Forecast Trader. If you disagree, you can buy the contract that looks undervalued. But be careful. You must be right more than 50.5% of the time to win. Go to IBKR Forecast Trader.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time. So why do so many dog foods contain awful things a human would never eat? To save his pets, world-famous veterinarian Dr. Marty knew he had to change what was in their bowl.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, my breakthrough formula that's changed everything about dog food.
Nature's Blend contains nothing but all-natural ingredients, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching and paw licking, even moving around better. And that's because Nature's Blend is freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, we gently preserve them, and you'll see the difference in your dog.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
Such a huge difference in her health. More energy, more playful, no more pooping issues. He's healthier, he looks better.
Dr. Marty has thousands of 5-star reviews. And for a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV. That's drmartypets.com/TV.
Muddy paws, dirty shoes, and endless cleaning? Are your floors always dirty no matter how many times you clean? Now there's a simple solution. Meet Muddy Mat, the ultra-absorbent microfiber chenille mat that keeps your dog's paws so clean, it's like they're wiping them at the door. Muddy Mat is designed with thousands of advanced ultra-soft microfibers that are 5 times more absorbent than ordinary doormats.
My floors have never been so clean. I mean, both Ruby and Blue came in covered in mud, and this anti-mud mat left their paws sparkling. They step across it just once and it completely makes their paws completely clean of mud. This is the best mat I've ever found, and we have tried many. There is still a sale going on. I wouldn't wait too long before they're gone.
Call or go to trymuddymat.com or scan the QR code to claim your 70% off and your free Muddy Mat. What are you waiting for? Call or go to trymuddymat.com or scan the QR code and get your own Muddy Mat today.
For pain in multiple spots like here, here, or here, Salonpas patches stick firmly and remove comfortably once your pain is gone. Salonpas. It's good medicine.
All right, welcome back. Time now for news from the left. New York's new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, takes office on January 1, New Year's Day, and says that the city will stop clearing homeless encampments, ending a very sensible Eric Adams administration policy. And here he is explaining why.
Would you continue these homeless sweeps?
No.
And what will you do as an alternative?
If you are not connecting homeless New Yorkers to the housing that they so desperately need, then you cannot deem anything you're doing to be a success.
So we're going to try this again. Is for the billionth time, we're going to just try and let people do as they wish and make the city dramatically filthier so we don't offend the homeless people here in New York. Here's a look, by the way, at California's liberal utopia. This is what happens when you just let people put their crap wherever they want and live wherever they want. Your entire beautiful city, and that was a beautiful city, turns into a dump. And for some reason, the people of this political persuasion cannot seem to figure that one out. So we're going to do it again. And finally, actor Richard Gere slamming the president and his administration's immigration policies overseas at the Guadalajara Book Fair in Mexico this week. Take a listen.
As an American, I'm deeply ashamed of this president we have. Now, clearly, this president we have is not a mature human being. This is not someone who has emotional intelligence. He behaves like a child. This President Trump, you have to treat him like a child who has impulse control problems. They are on the wrong side of history. They're on the wrong side of the present. They're on the wrong side of the future.
Yeah, these dumb actors don't really understand anything. Richard, we just want a border. You know, we just want the wealthiest country in the world to have a border, which is mandatory if you want to keep living in a nice country that can survive. It's just the way it has to be. Not that you really care. Gere also claimed there's no difference between Americans and Somali refugees during an interview at that same event. Imagine believing that. Somalian refugees that absolutely refuse to assimilate to our culture, something we've demanded of new arrivals into our country since the inception of this country. Actors, where would we be? Biden gets a big award for his rainbow pandering. Up next.
Closed captioning is brought to you by MagnaLife Pain Relieving Foot Cream to target neuropathy symptoms.
The stabbing, burning pain in your feet is real. Here's what real customers have to say about MagnaLife Pain Relieving Foot Cream, the only thing that works for my diabetic neuropathy.
Available in foot care and diabetic aisles.
From our orchards in Oregon to your holiday table, Harry & David delivers a legacy of gourmet excellence. Our prepared meals, fine wines, charcuterie, all crafted to elevate any celebration. Make it a hand-picked holiday with Harry & David.
It's the Blue Compass RV annual Blue Tag clearance. Save over 40% on select new RVs during our largest sale of the year. Plus, every RV comes with a 1-year VIP membership to RV Complete, a $5,000 value. Visit us online or in store today.
You know the holidays are meant to be about family, laughter, and taking things slow. But when you're in pain, it's hard to enjoy any of it. I know because my back has made life difficult. But that's why I love the Signal Relief Patch. It's helped me enjoy the holidays again. Join the thousands who have experienced relief and get 30% off your Signal Relief Patch today. I've given this patch as a gift to friends, family, and even strangers I've seen in pain.
Signal Relief is truly giving me my happiness back.
The Signal Relief Patch puts pain on the back burner.
The Signal Relief Patch has been life-changing.
This is too good to be true. It's too easy.
In a recent study, over 85% of people felt relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. This patch was a game changer for me, and it can be for you too. Trust me, the patch works.
My employees and I want to thank all of you at Newsmax for your continued support of MyPillow. It's because of you and the grace of God that we're making it through. And to thank you, we're bringing you the best offers ever. Get our MyPillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regularly $119.98, now only $29.88. Our My Towels are finally back in stock. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. Towels that actually work. What a concept. And for the first time and the only time ever, you're going to get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code when you order today. Inventory for these offers are extremely limited, and once they're gone, they're gone.
There she is, Christmas miracle.
Where's Aunt Tilly's gift?
Funny story about the chocolate.
You ate her gift?
You're sending premium chocolate from chocolate.com to a woman who re-gifted her bathrobe to you.
It has antioxidants! It's fine, I'll order from chocolate.com again. Real ingredients, pretty packaging, the whole thing looks elevated. She's gonna think we care. Chocolate.com, premium chocolate, zero effort, maximum forgiveness.
Radical jihadists are not done. Iran promises death to America. They've built sleeper terror cells in the U.S. They support terror groups out to destroy Israel, including Hamas, whose founding charter calls for Islam to dominate the world.
The young people have been educated to believe that the most sacred thing they do is stab a Christian in the heart.
The only democracy in the Middle East that supports religious freedom is Israel. Standing for freedom, not terror.
And finally tonight, our former president, Joe Biden, today receiving the Chris Abel Impact Award for his historic role in championing LGBTQ plus rights and leadership in achieving the most LGBTQ plus inclusive administration in U.S. history, they say. And as we know, there was just tremendous LGBTQ pandering in the previous White House. Remember when Biden had a trans woman, I guess, at the White House, and then that trans woman pulled her fake boobs out on the south lawn of the White House? You just saw it at the beginning of that clip right there. That was one of the moments. This is what the White House was for a little while, and she's dancing away. Or you had the influencer Benny Drama parading around the White House with the long acrylic nails, pretending to be an intern, giving a tour, making these, I guess, funny little clips. This is kind of what they focused on. This was the kind of stuff you got from the social media, from the comms department. Biden got an award for a lot of this today. The most notable LGBTQ members from his administration, Pete Buttigieg and Karine Jean-Pierre. Karine, who Biden worked with constantly, the mouthpiece of the administration for years, was called by the president Kareem today. So it's Karine Jean-Pierre. Here's Joe Biden calling her Kareem, which is a man's name. Take a listen.
When I took office, I promised to have an administration that looked like America. I've kept my promise. And not just for the community, but my press secretary, Kareem. My head personnel, Goodman, is here. I don't know if he's here or not. There you are, man. Stand up. Oh, I see Kareem. There you are.
Goodman's here, too. And Kareem. Kareem, the press secretary that he worked with for, like 2.5 years? Finity's up next. Have a good weekend. It's cold outside. We'll see you on Monday.